The fate of an entire people hung by the thinnest thread of silk, a single decision made in the quiet corridors of a palace in Susa. Imagine standing before a king who could end your life with a mere flick of his hand, knowing that your existence is the only barrier between your kin and total annihilation. This is the story of Esther, a young woman who found herself at the epicenter of a geopolitical crisis and a spiritual trial that would change history forever. Before we dive into the depths of this ancient strategy, take a moment to reflect on your own challenges today. If you find this journey of faith and courage meaningful, please consider subscribing to our channel to join a community dedicated to uncovering the hidden hands of providence in our lives. The ancient Persian Empire was a place of immense scale and complexity, a tapestry woven with different cultures, languages, and belief systems. Within this vast empire lived the Jewish people, a community that had been displaced from their ancestral home and now found themselves living as a minority under foreign rule. Among them was Esther, a girl of quiet strength and dignity, who had been elevated to the position of Queen of Persia. She was not a warrior by trade, nor a politician by profession, yet she held a position that would soon become the most critical instrument for the survival of her race. Alongside her was Mordecai, her cousin and guardian, a man whose steadfast devotion to his faith would eventually ignite a lethal conflict with one of the most dangerous men in the empire. Haman, the king's right-hand man, was a figure of cold ambition and unchecked hatred. His pride was so vast that it demanded the total submission of everyone he encountered. When Mordecai refused to bow to him, Haman did not simply seek revenge against one man. He conceived a plan of genocide. We are not meant to face our battles in isolation. The act of fasting and prayer was a way for the entire nation to unite their intentions, creating a strength that far exceeded the sum of its parts. As we conclude this exploration of history and faith, think about the areas of your life where you feel like you are standing before a king. What are the obstacles that seem too large to overcome? What are the fears that keep you silent? Esther's story is a reminder that you have a voice and you have a purpose. Even in the most dire circumstances, there is a hidden hand at work if you are willing to look with eyes of faith. Peace is not just the absence of conflict, it is the presence of clarity and the courage to stand for what is right, even when the odds are stacked against you. He manipulated the king of Persia into signing a decree that would allow for the systematic destruction of all Jewish people. This was not a minor dispute. It was an existential threat that carried the weight of a royal seal. Haman's strategy was rooted in fear and bureaucratic efficiency, intending to erase a culture through the power of the state. As the decree was sent to every province of the empire, panic swept through the Jewish communities. Esther remained in the palace, shielded by her position, yet deeply burdened by the news she received from Mordecai. This is where we must pause to consider the psychological and spiritual weight placed upon her. Esther was not aware of the full extent of the danger until Mordecai sent word to her. He challenged her with a question that resonates through the ages. Who knows if you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? It is a question we might ask ourselves when we face insurmountable obstacles. Are our current circumstances, however painful or difficult, actually a stage for something greater than we can currently conceive? Esther realized that her silence was no longer an option. However, she did not rush in with a sword or a political manifesto. She chose a strategy that was both radical and invisible. She requested that her people fast and pray for 3 days. By shifting the conflict from the physical realm to the spiritual, Esther was preparing herself for a confrontation that required more than mere human cleverness. She was aligning her heart with the divine, acknowledging that the outcome of her mission depended on a power far greater than the Persian throne. This is a vital lesson for us today. Before we act in our own lives to solve a problem, we must first ensure that our actions are rooted in a clear and centered spirit. When the 3 days concluded, Esther approached the king. The law was clear. Any person who entered the inner court without being summoned faced immediate execution unless the king extended his golden scepter. Esther walked into that court as a woman walking into the mouth of a lion. Her strategy was not based on intimidation but on grace, timing, and patience. She did not immediately confront Haman or demand the repeal of the decree. Instead, she invited the king and Haman to a private meal. She created an environment where the king felt honored, yet he remained curious about her true request. Haman, blinded by his own vanity, interpreted these invitations as proof of his own importance. He felt secure in the king's favor, unaware that Esther was systematically dismantling his influence from within. This is a classic example of how pride can blind a person to the reality of their surroundings. Haman was so focused on his own advancement that he could not see the trap being laid for him. He even began building a gallows to execute Mordecai, convinced that his victory was absolute. He was a man who believed he controlled his destiny, failing to recognize that his actions were only moving pieces on a board he did not control. On the night of the second banquet, the king's sleep was inexplicably interrupted. He ordered the royal chronicles to be read to him, and he was reminded of a heroic act Mordecai had performed years earlier, an act for which Mordecai had never been rewarded. This sequence of events, seemingly coincidental, was the turning point. The king, eager to honor the man he had once neglected, asked Haman how to best honor someone. Haman, still thinking of himself, suggested extravagant rewards. Imagine his horror when the king ordered him to bestow those very honors upon his enemy Mordecai. This was the first major crack in Haman's armor. At the banquet, Esther finally revealed her true identity and the nature of Haman's wicked decree. She did not scream or act out of bitterness. She spoke with a measured, calm authority that left no room for Haman to maneuver. When the king realized that his own trusted advisor had been using the royal authority to commit mass murder, his rage was sudden and complete. Haman was executed on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. The strategy had worked. The invisible hand of providence had turned the weapon of the oppressor against himself. The decree could not be officially revoked due to the laws of the Medes and Persians, but a second decree was issued, allowing the Jewish people the right to defend themselves. The empire braced for conflict, and when the day arrived, the people were prepared. They did not initiate violence, but they were ready to protect their lives and their families. Because of Esther's courage and her decision to seek wisdom and divine guidance, the planned massacre was averted. Second, we see that the most effective strategies are not always the loudest or the most aggressive. By using patience, wisdom, and an invitation to communicate, Esther achieved what a direct confrontation could never have accomplished. She understood that timing is everything. Third, we must reflect on the concept of being placed in a position for a specific purpose. Many of us feel that our current challenges are signs that we have been forgotten or that we are merely victims of circumstance. Her actions transformed a moment of potential extinction into a moment of survival and ultimately a lasting legacy of resilience. What can we learn from this historical account that remains relevant to us in our daily lives? First, we learn that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in the face of it. Esther was terrified, yet she committed herself to the path she knew she had to take. Life rarely offers us easy answers, but it always offers us opportunities to act with virtue. Whether you are searching for meaning in your suffering, trying to understand your role in a larger story, or looking for the strength to face an enemy within or without, remember that you are capable of more than you think. You are part of a narrative that is larger than any single moment of pain. Yet if we view our struggles through the lens of Esther's journey, we might see them as preparation. Perhaps the place where you are right now, whether you are dealing with a difficult workplace, a broken relationship, or a deep personal doubt, is the precise location where you have the potential to make the greatest impact. Esther did not choose to be in the palace, yet she used her presence there to save her people. We also see the danger of pride. Haman's downfall was not just his hatred for the Jewish people, but his total lack of humility. He believed he was the center of the world, and that belief clouded his judgment, leading him to ignore the warnings and the realities of his situation. In our own lives, we are often tempted to act out of pride, seeking recognition or vengeance. Just as Esther was the instrument for her people's salvation, you have the capacity to be an instrument of goodness in your own sphere of influence. We have explored the secret strategy of Esther, the combination of patient preparation, spiritual alignment, and bold action. We have seen how Haman's hubris became his downfall, and how a single woman's commitment to her people turned the tide of history. These lessons are not just for the scholars or the historians, they are for you. The story of Esther teaches us that there is a higher justice, and that those who act with integrity and trust in something beyond their own ego are often the ones who are positioned to bring about true change. Consider the role of community support. Esther did not face this alone. She asked for the solidarity of her people. When we are going through our own trials, it is crucial to lean on our community, to share our burdens with those we trust, and to seek collective wisdom. They are for the man or woman who is currently wrestling with doubt, feeling rejected, or facing a challenge that feels impossible. Your story is still being written, and the choices you make today, to stand firm, to seek wisdom, and to act with grace, will define the outcome of your own unique battle. If this exploration has helped you find a new perspective on your own struggles, or if you feel a renewed sense of purpose, we invite you to take the next step. Please subscribe to our channel and share this message with someone who might need to hear it today. Your engagement helps us continue to produce content that seeks to connect the deeper truths of faith with the realities of our human experience. Remember that you are never truly alone in your struggles, and that the quiet, hidden work you do today, the prayers you say, the risks you take, the integrity you maintain, is building the foundation for a future you cannot yet see. We thank you for joining us on this journey through history, and we look forward to exploring more stories of resilience, faith, and divine providence with you in the future. Stand tall, keep your heart aligned with the truth, and never underestimate the impact of your actions when you act with courage and conviction.